Guest on Keel heard via the Jack Spring Electric Keel Newsmaker hotline, the latest, Congressman Mike Johnson. Hey, Mr. Mike, welcome back to Keel. How you doing this morning?
Hey, Robert and Aaron, great to hear your voices, and glad you guys are on top of everything as usual.
Just going to say, everybody healthy in your family, everybody healthy, everybody safe.
We are, by God's grace. My youngest child, Will, had to be tested a week and a half ago. He had some symptoms, but by God's grace, he came out clear on that. So we're hunkered down like everybody else.
We love him, by the way.
From your Facebook
thank you.
From your Facebook page yesterday, Mr. Mike, I am honored that President Trump has given me the opportunity to serve on the Opening Up America Again Congressional Group. Tell us about that. How many on it? Who's on it? I know that Mitt Romney is not. What are you guys talking about already?
Right. Well, so it's a group of congressional leaders. There's 22 Republicans in the House, 10 Democrats. It's bipartisan. Honored to have been asked to do that. And, the president knows what I think about this. I've been pretty outspoken about the need for us to reopen the economy again. And you know that he feels the same way. I mean, he's been very eager to return Americans to work and school and to some sense of normalcy again. Everybody knows he famously said a couple of weeks back now that America was just not made for this. We're not made to be to have the close sign on the door of every business, and we can't continue on like this. So he's been very anxious to do it. The group is already working in earnest. We had our first conference call with him yesterday morning before he talked to all the governors around the country in a video conference call. The vice president was on the call with us, Secretary Mnuchin of Treasury and other cabinet officials, and we had a frank discussion, and when he opened it up for suggestions, I was the second person in the queue, and I said, Mr. President, I would encourage you to, when the guidelines are released this afternoon, this is yesterday morning, I said, soon after, I would encourage you to just come right out at one of these briefings and encourage small businesses in particular to reopen, challenge them, ask them to do it and commit to do it on May 1st or whenever that earliest date is determined by each state. And then ask them to email you their name and contact information to the White House to share their comeback stories, because I think it'd be a great encouragement for you to share that with the American people and to spur more of this on. And he loved the idea, and Vice President Pence did. We'll see how this develops. Some of this is being developed as we go, but at least the guidelines are there now, and each state can begin to enter into these phases. Is
there an opinion among lawmakers, especially in this congressional group, is there, and I assume it's a minority opinion, that we need to stay on lockdown, that the economy, the economy needs to stay frozen in place, and the shutdown rules should be maintained? Is there any of that?
Well, you know what? I applaud the president for how this group is composed. There's some very vocal, strong leaders on both sides. I mean, my view is probably counterbalanced by, my good friend and colleague Ro Khanna out of California. He's one of the leaders of the Progressive Caucus. I represent the largest caucus of conservatives in Congress, and he's one of the people you see on television every night, singing the other tune. So he's given an intention to balance that. So there are Democrats, vocal Democrats from New York and California on this group with us. I think it'll be a good balance. But what my sense was, to be honest, to give you inside baseball of the first working group conference call we had yesterday with the president, my sense is that everybody on that call understands that the urgent need to get the country back. And I heard what you said a little while ago, Robert. I mean, clearly there are some Democrat operatives at the national level who want states to be closed down for longer periods. They honestly, I mean, it's sad, but there are a lot of operatives that want to inflict more.
Welcome to Verizon Wireless. We're sorry, the number you have dialed.
They want them to hurt at their pocketbook so they can pin it on the president. I mean, we are in an election year, and it's coming up in just a few months now. So we have to be cognizant of that as one of the agenda items, but we got to work through it, and we've got to get the economy open, because everybody, I don't care what party you're in, what socioeconomic status you have an interest in getting this our free market working again, and we've got to do it ASAP.
Anthony Fauci talked about doing this in phases. Phase 2 being schools reopen. Phase 3 returning to normalcy. The phase 1 would be gatherings larger than 10 people, etc. The timetable for those phases, though, are going to be different in Wyoming than they're going to be in Louisiana. What are you hoping for when we get schools reopening this fall? Are you very hopeful of that happening?
I more than hopeful. I'm insistent upon it. Look, it was a little disconcerting. I've said this in a couple of interviews over the last 24 hours. You often hear Dr. Fauci reference Louisiana as one of the worst case examples. I mean, we are, in terms of the statistics. We've had a higher incidence rate here, certainly, than most other states and even our closest neighbors. It's disconcerting to me for him to say, well, Louisiana is kind of a worst case scenario. And then, look at Arkansas, for example. They've had almost no incidents. Oklahoma is the same way. Texas, in relative terms, is at very, really little incidence of the virus overall as compared to us. And so what makes me nervous, Aaron, is that these other states are going to, flip on the switch and the proverbial green light on Monday or May 1 or as soon as they can. And they put the open signs out in the window of every business, and then we stay closed for a longer period. We can't afford to do that in Louisiana. I mean, at some point you reach the point of diminishing returns, meaning that if public health is the ultimate goal here, and it is, you're going to protect people by opening the economy again, because there are huge long-term consequences, of course, to everyone for poverty, right? And that's what we're going to be facing in dramatic numbers for a sustained period of time if we don't get people back to work. That's an overriding concern.
Mr. Mike, there are more and more people at all levels of government, in the executive branch, from intelligence, some congressmen the last couple of days, who are talking more and more about the source of COVID-19, the Wuhan virus, actually being a Chinese lab mishap that sort of leaked out accidentally, and then the Chinese frantically tried to cover it all up. What do you think about people that are throwing that idea out? In your mind, is there more and more credibility to this as days go by?
I don't think there's any question about that. I've been saying for months, longer than that, my whole political career, as the president has it, you can't trust anything out of China. When he ran for president in 2016, and he referenced China all the time as this threat and really acting like an adversary in so many ways, he was panned by the liberal media for that. He was exactly right. His instinct was correct. And it was more than instinct. It was based on data, on things he had seen and experienced, himself. And so we know that. So, I am the chairman of the Republican Study Committee. It's the largest caucus of conservatives, and we have a national security and foreign affairs task force. Yesterday, I composed a letter. The chairman of my task force and I, Joe Wilson, out of South Carolina, are going to issue this to all the top leaders in Congress, all of our colleagues, and we're suggesting that we take some strong measures to hold China accountable for these harmful actions they've taken. And we bullet point list all the things we know they've done, but we want to authorize sanctions against them in many ways, and end all visas for Chinese government officials and their children to come to the U.S. for education, leisure, or other purposes until China retracts these statements. They tried to blame the U.S. for the virus. I mean, it's crazy. We have to counter this Chinese propaganda and disinformation that they've been involved in, and just prohibit a lot of the things they've been allowed to do, because we have to take this very seriously, and they have to know that we are, so that we can make them pay in certain respects for what they have caused here. They hit the ball. They would not let national journalists and scientists have the info, and that hindered our reaction to it.